So we're going to be talking about mental health today. We're in a space for that, right? I'm also going to be talking about depression, suicidal ideation, and anxiety. Whenever I do this, I always try to create a safe space among us all, right? So before I start, I just want to make sure that we're all feeling really good. And I also want to say, mental health within our community is still very much stigmatized. And if at any moment, any part of my story makes you feel triggered, please know that you have the permission to quietly excuse yourself, okay? Because at the end of the day, your safety, my safety, means so much. I'm also gonna ask if I can please get the audience to really focus and to be quiet. So vendors over there, can I please get your attention? Can I just please have everyone to just focus? It would really mean a lot to me as I go through this story. One of the things I like to do before I start any of my presentations, and I'm so old school, I usually have my paperwork with me, but today I have my phone. I like to go through my land acknowledgement because it's very important that I honor the land. This is the only land that we're on that is so important to me. So I want to begin by saying, I humbly acknowledge the sacred land on which I work, live, and learn on, known as Toronto and traditionally as Turtle Island, as the unceded and ancestral territories of the Nishnabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of the Credit River, the Wendat, and many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. As a woman of African descent, descendant of enslaved Africans, my privilege as being an immigrant settler here from Jamaica through post-colonial displacement emphasizes the significance of acknowledging that Indigenous sovereignty is interconnected with collective liberation. As a settler, it is imperative that the work I do continues to reflect on ways in which I mobilize and take action in solidarity with Indigenous peoples and communities. Thank you. So, thank you. I can start my story off in 1981, the year I was born. Yes, I'm 42 years old. Give it up for being Black. Or I can start it off in 2011 when I decided that I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna leave Toronto, I'm gonna move to Vancouver to pursue my acting career. See, the thing is, I came here in 1996 and everything I knew was acting. I love acting so much. I went to George Brown just across the street for theater, and then I went to Humber for film and television. That's all I know. That's all I know. Somehow, during that career, I realized that Toronto was becoming this pool that was just so filled with everybody wanted to be an actor. So I decided if I move to Vancouver, where there's less Black people, I'll maybe have a greater chance, right? So I decided that I'm gonna pack up. I'm gonna move to Vancouver. This was in 2011, right at the beginning. And I'm gonna do this acting thing. Cause see, I was 29 at the time, and 30 was approaching. And 30 was this big number, this big scary number where I didn't have any kids, I didn't have the house with the picket fence, I didn't have the career, so I just figured I should have the career. I didn't have the husband, I didn't have anything that you think a 30-year-old should have, right? Because you put so much emphasis in being 30. So I said, I'm gonna pack up and I'm gonna move to Vancouver. I'm gonna give myself 6 months to become super famous like Halle Berry because we share the same birthday, so we should share the same success, right? So off I go. I was getting little auditions here and there. McDonald's, I was doing commercials to McDonald's, Tim Hortons, things were looking good, but I wasn't getting that big role like I wanted, right? And I should say the biggest thing that I did over in Vancouver, I played a Volturi vampire in that Twilight movie, like the last Twilight series, so I did that. So I was like, okay, there's some Twilight fans in here. It still wasn't enough. It still wasn't getting me that superstardom that I wanted. So I was just really working hard, really going for auditions. I started noticing little things about my body that was different. I started eating really fast. I couldn't sleep. I was walking really fast. My heart was beating really fast. I was doing a lot of things that was fast. I had a roommate at the time because believe it or not, back in 2011, rent was expensive. Can you imagine now? I had a roommate at the time and she sat me down and she said, I think you're showing the signs of anxiety. And I went into my room, I closed that door, and I thought to myself, Anxiety? White girls get that. I never heard of a black person having anxiety. And the reason why I said that is because I was always the token or one of two black girls in acting school. Whether it's with theater or whether it's with film, I was always one of one black girl. And so all my white friends will talk a bit about having anxiety or being stressed out or paranoid or just like all of this. And I was just like, wow, I really can't bring those kind of talks back home to my Jamaican Rastafarian father, because we don't talk like that at home. And first of all, I just want to shout out single dads, because my dad raised me and my brother as a single dad, and that's commendable, especially in our community. You don't see it often. So I went into my room and I thought that, and then you know what, I ended up having to go to the hospital. But before I go, I want to take you a bit as to how my anxiety felt. I'm going to take you on this journey, so I'm going to ask you to please close your eyes with me. And I want you to picture your heart is in this cage. And your heart is beating at 1,000,000 miles per second. And with every beat, your heart is growing bigger and bigger. But the cage is growing smaller and smaller. Open your eyes. That's how I felt. I felt like I had no control of my body. I used to walk and I just used to beat my chest so often because my heart felt like it was stuck, it was about to come out. I did end up going to the hospital. They ran all sorts of tests on me. They put me through the scanner, x-rays, blood tests, everything. And it came back that I did in fact have anxiety. They prescribed Valium for me actually. And I remember looking at that prescription and remember, I did a scene in acting class where Valium is the crazy people drug. They telling me I'm crazy? So I ripped up the prescription and I repeated to myself, mind over matter, mind over matter. And I beat my anxiety for a week. So I thought. It came back so rapidly, I couldn't sleep. I was brushing my teeth fast. I couldn't eat. I couldn't control it. I was in the hospital. They had me hooked up to heart monitors on a treadmill, trying to figure out what is going on with this young lady's heart. I went home with heart monitors just to monitor. I got so sick, and even though I made lifelong friends in Vancouver, I had to come back home to Toronto. I had to. I needed family. I needed support. Now, the thought of coming back home to Toronto as a quote-unquote loser, not getting my dreams accomplished, spiraled that anxiety into depression. Now, my depression came in 2 stages. There's the one that we all know about, right? The blinds are closed, I'm not eating, or I'm eating myself silly, I'm not talking to anybody, I'm not brushing my teeth for days, I'm not showering for days, I'm constantly crying and in the despair of a hole. I didn't pick up my phone, I just didn't talk to anybody. We know that side of depression, right? The other side was, I felt like if I lived a life of hashtagging best life, if I went out, if my hair was slayed and my makeup was done and I was wearing expensive clothes from head to toe and I was partying and drinking and living my best life, then it will go away. That is the form that's called the silent depression in our community. And a lot of us struggle with that, but I'm gonna digress. So I went through that stages. I was going out, I was partying because I figured if I had a good time outside, then the sickness inside will solely disappear. But it wasn't. And here's the thing, I was battling for a while, but I didn't feel safe or felt like I could talk to anybody. I even had a boyfriend at the time and I figured I couldn't even talk to him because you're gonna deem me as crazy. The only person that I felt safe to speak to was my dad. So I went to him one time and I said, Daddy, I'm not feeling well. I don't like these thoughts that are coming in my head. I don't even think I'm gonna live to see 30. I just don't know. My dad said, drink some tea and read your Bible. I drank tea after tea after tea. I drank so much tea I could have opened up a tea emporium. But nothing was working, and I read my Bible, nothing was working. I went back again, and I told this to my dad, the same thing. My dad said, drink some tea, read your Bible, and pray. I was doing all of that. And let me tell you, I grew up as a Christian. There's no way I'm denouncing my religion or anything like that, or my Christianity. But if you have a doctor for your physical being, if you cut your leg, you break your leg, you can go to a doctor. It's okay to see a doctor when you're not mentally well. I want to state that right here, okay? I was doing all of that, it wasn't working. I went back one last time, and I told this to my dad. And my dad said the most ignorant thing that ended up saving my life. He said, since you like to chat so much, how about you tell your business to strangers? Because see, my dad's fear, and a lot of parents' fear, our parents' fear, is that at the time my dad thought that if I tell a friend, then this friend's gonna tell another friend and tell another friend, and somehow it's gonna reach back home to Jamaica that he's raising a mad daughter. No parent wants that. They seem to think that they have failed. And so a lot of the times when your parents tell you certain things, if you're around my age group, your parents tell you certain things, and they shun mental health, is because they don't know better. It's what they were taught. That's what they were taught, and so they're just doing what was best. I took that advice, and I used to take the subway all the time on the bus, and I would wear sunglasses. It was my best friend because I would cry so much. And my struggle was that here I am about to be 30. I'm in the land of milk and honey, and so many people would love this opportunity, and I don't even have anything to say, I'm gonna bring my mom up. I feel like I'm such a struggler, being like an immigrant child. I feel like I was such a failure. I was battling all of these thoughts in my head. So one day I was at the park, and I was just sitting down, crying, and this lady comes up to me, and she just asked me one question. She said, what's wrong? And I told her everything. And here's the thing. She provided a safe space by not giving me any advice or judgment, listening with a judgmental ear. And say, but you have a roof over your head, you have clothes upon your back, you have money in your back. What do you need to be crying about or struggling about? She just listened to me pouring my heart out. And that's all I needed. I just wanted someone to hear me, to see me, to listen. And so to be honest, I started using strangers as my therapist. I will go about the place and I will tell strangers my business left, right, and center, because I'm like, you don't know me from Adam. If I want to use a name like Michelle, whatever, you don't know me. But at the same time, I'm letting something out. And the first time I told a stranger, I felt like the weight was lifted off my shoulder. Here comes towards my birthday's coming up. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go to Mexico. I'm going to celebrate this 30th birthday, and I'm going to enjoy it. The day before I turned 30, I sat down and I had a conversation with God. And I said, God, what am I put here for? Every single person is born for a divine purpose. And I need to know what it is. I don't want to find out when I'm 50. I don't want to find out when I'm 60. I don't even think I'm going to make it all the way to 30. So tell me, what am I put here for? I fell asleep because I was having this conversation with God, and I was crying, and I woke up and there was something on the TV screen, and it said, because I was watching the E-News channel, and it said actors who have made it by doing their own thing. So I thought perhaps that was a sign. I got back now from Toronto. I got back from Mexico to Toronto, and a friend of mine said, hey, I'm putting on a fashion show. Would you like to co-host? I said, sure. I've never really hosted anything yet, co-hosted anything. I used to go out to events, and I used to have this card that says Stacy Buchannan, aspiring actress. I used to give it to people all the time. I go to events and I will network, right? So I accepted. I said, yes, I'll co-host. We did the show. It was a success. The owner came up to me after, and he said, I know you're an actress and a model, but if you ever want to put on your own event, you can do it here. I was like, okay, put on my own event. Like I said, I only attend events. I don't put on events, but sure, I'll think about it. That night I went home and I decided, you know what? I'm going to do an event. I'm going to do an event, and I'm going to make it all about the arts. It's going to be about music, fashion, film, arts, visual arts, put it all together and put it into this one event. And I'm going to call it the Mystic Effect. And it's an ode to Vancouver. And how I'm going to do it, I'm going to make sure nobody on the stage is famous or has a name in Toronto. Because I want them to be the underdog, the people that are hungry, the people that are passionate, the people that really want the work, but nobody gives them a chance because they haven't made a name for themselves. And I put it out there on Facebook, and a couple people said, you know what, Stacy, and your show is not going to work because you need to have one famous name on there to sell tickets. I said, no. I'm going to listen to God on this one, and I'm just going to do the show. Now, one thing about me, I'm a girl that keeps a journal. I write things down. I have receipts. You can never come to me because I have receipts. I don't delete messages. I have it. I keep it. I store it. And so I keep a journal. I remember the day specifically. The show opened up, and it was March 25th, and it was a Sunday. And this was in 2012, and we did the show. And I personally stood there at the door with my friend who was acting as security, and we had to stop people from coming in because the venue was so packed. People came out and people poured in. After the show, when my host called me up and the audience was clapping for me, as I'm walking to the stage, I started crying. And I'll tell you why. Because after I did this show, on Sunday, March 25th, 2012, I was gonna go home and I was gonna end it all. I just wanted to leave a little bit of my footprint in this big white sand in this world. I wanted to leave something. And every single person in that audience that got up and gave me a standing ovation and clapped for me saved my life without them even knowing that they saved my life. The following year, because people said, Stacy, you gotta do the show again, you gotta make it an annual show. So I said, okay, I'm gonna start my production company and I'm gonna do the show, I'm gonna make it annual, I'm gonna open up next year. I put it on Facebook again, that, I'm gonna be doing this, and shout out to Facebook, because Facebook sold a lot of tickets for me. And I said, I'm gonna do the show. And here's the thing about us human beings, right? You could have 1 million people love you, but you have 1 or 2 that don't, and you're so fixated on what they think about you and all of this, right? And I remember some people were shouting out saying, who is this Stacy in Buchannan? Where did she come from? And I'm like, first of all, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And people never see the shine that you do. They never see your grind and your blood, sweat, and tears. They only see your shine. I remember seeing the couple people that had something opposing to say. And I remember reaching out to my dad and I said, Dad, why are people saying these negative things? Do they not know that I almost took my own life? Do they not know what I'm going through? And my dad said this to me, and I want to leave this lesson with you. He said, there are 2 things in life that you can never, ever control. 1, what people think about you, and 2, what people say about you. You can only control your reaction. So I decided to react. And how I decided was to react, I was like, I'm just gonna write a book. And I'm gonna tell people about my journey with mental health. But then I said, no, Stacy, and you're a little bit more creative than that. So I decided I'm gonna do a documentary. I started researching people in the Black community that were talking about mental health. Now, rolling around, this was 2013, and it was still such a taboo. You didn't get Black people talking about mental health openly on social media. But I got a team together, and we researched this for a year. And we reached out to people that I saw that were active on social media that was talking about it. And I reached out to them, and they said yes. And I remember it was hard to get a Black man to come on camera and talk about mental health. It was so hard, and I have friends that have been through it. But to come on camera to talk about struggles, especially the world sees the Black man, and for him to have his ish together and everything like that, and just the policing of his body and everything, it was hard. And I get it. But I had one friend, actually it was my brother's friend, that said yes, he's gonna come on camera and he's gonna do it. So we have our team together now. I reached out to my church, because you can't have something about mental health and you can't bring the church in. So I got the church in, and I also got a prominent Black psychologist in. The whole production, I made sure everything was Black. From the people that supported, that made the t-shirts, from the people that provided food on the shoot day, to the homes we used, everything that I did, I made sure that I was giving back to the Black community and was educating the Black community. Here's the thing now, I needed someone to direct this film. I knew I was gonna produce it off my credit card, but I didn't know to direct. So I reached out to a director whose work I love. We sat down, we had a conversation, and I said, I'm doing this documentary on mental health in the Black community, and I need your help. I think you'll be great at directing this. He went through the logistics, we looked at it, and he said, hey, Toronto is a melting pot. Toronto has so many different races and cultures. Why don't you make this about mental health, about all the different cultures and races? I said, it's a great idea, but I spent a year working on this, and I really think that this will be good. He said he's not going to do it because the black community does not support the black community, so he's not going to do it. I was so discouraged, and I put the documentary on hold because I'm like, I guess he's right. I guess he's right. When do you ever see a whole bunch of black people come out and support each other, right? My dad called me in one of those days when I was just like, I gotta shelf this documentary. And he said, how's the documentary going on? And I said, Daddy, I'm not gonna do the documentary because the black community does not support the black community. And what was I thinking? And my dad goes, you're mad? You come all this way to not do this documentary? And by then I was so fed up with my dad and his philosophical talks or whatever. And I said, Daddy, are you gonna come into this documentary and are you gonna tell people how you treated me when I needed you the most? My dad said, yes. And so I named this documentary after my dad. I named it after your dad, your mom, your auntie, your cousin, your sister, every single person that purposely turns a blind eye to mental health in the black community. The documentary is called The Blind Stigma. And we opened that documentary, I wanted to open it up in Black History Month. So this came out February 7th, 2015. It was a snowstorm that day. It was downtown on College Street. And I was like, I don't think anyone's gonna come out. And the theater was packed. It was packed. You had people standing outside. It was packed. Because people wanted to see this. And I want you to know right now, the biggest silent killer in our community is mental illness. It is such a stigma. It is that rug that we keep sweeping that dust under and covering up. It's the big green and pink polka dot elephant that sits right there that you completely ignore. It is something that is such a secrecy and such a shame, and we have to understand that secrecy and shame are best friends, right? But it's something that whenever people ask me, like, how do you start to empower people about mental health? How do you get people to want to know more about it? And I always say this, you gotta talk about it. Because let me ask you this question. What does a person who lives with mental illness look like? Anyone? What do they look like? Exactly. People may look at me and think I'm polished. Yeah, I look polished. Do I struggle with anxiety? Absolutely. Jamal was calling out my name right there. Probably had a mini panic attack, but I held myself together. I got up, I walked, I took my breathing, and I came here. Just because I know. So thank you. So even though my depression is something that I vow I will never go back down that train. Let me tell you something. When you've been through depression, you start to understand. You take mental and emotional abilities and you take things tangible that to help you to get over it. So like Randall was here. Randall talked about how do you start my morning. I start my morning by meditation. I have to before I go out there in the world. It's tools that I have to take. It's a mental health toolbox. And it's not a physical box, but the things that I do to make sure that my mental health is in tip-top shape and make sure that I take care of that. I'm gonna go a little bit back to that documentary, and then I'm gonna come back to more. That documentary then went on to make Canadian history. The Huffington Post called me one day and they did an article of me and they're just like, this documentary is a part of Canadian history because it was the first documentary done in Canada that talked about how mental health is perceived in the Black community. So many other projects started coming out of that. So many other people started talking about mental health because you gave this platform and a way to like, where we can really empower each other. Number one, we gotta change the language around mental health. First, we gotta talk about it and let people know that you are never alone. Your struggles are not you, right? It's your struggles. And no one should say to you, oh, but you have this or but you have that. I'm going through something, so please just listen to me. You gotta also understand that mental illness, and I wanna go a little bit back to depression, because I know it's something that is really prevalent in our community, along with all forms of different mental health, but depression. I wanna tell you something about depression. I wanna tell you something about suicide and those that have died by suicide. Maybe you have a relative, maybe you have a friend, maybe you have a colleague. When you're in that space where you feel like you want to end it all, You're never thinking that you're leaving your family with pain. You're never thinking that you're so selfish. You're thinking so selfless. You're thinking that your parents, your family, the world is 100% better off without you. And it is an illness, right? So I want you to know that if you ever had somebody that died by suicide and you feel like, oh my God, I'm blaming myself, I just want you to know that in that state, it's never about them leaving and be like, oh my God, like I'm leaving my family with all of that, right? And I also want you to know something about depression, why we continuously use words like lazy. Because we all have that cousin, auntie, that relative that you say, so lazy. You all have that auntie that is so jumpy. It's anxiety. We grew up with all of these words that are so negative that we didn't even know was happening. And let me tell you something right now, please. Whenever you think that a person is lazy and you're like, oh, they have depression and you're just lazy, let me tell you why you're lazy with depression. You have a mind that wants to die 24/7 around the clock, no break. And you have a body that wants to live 24/7 around the break, and they're fighting. It makes you exhausted. It makes you tired. It makes you, quote unquote, lazy. If we start having more conversations like this, shout out to Jamal and the whole team, if we start creating more spaces like this, where you feel safe, where you know that you are not alone, you are never alone. Trust me, you are never alone. When you have conversations where even if you don't have, say, a physical safe space, you can have a friend you can turn to share something with. If you don't have a friend, you can start writing those thoughts out. Because let me tell you something, when you have negative thoughts in your head, the brain cells replaces itself every day. And if you're going to continuously think negative, it's going to replace it with just negative. So you want to get it out, and you want to do little things to maintain your mental health. So I'm going to go into a list of a few things that I've done, that I continuously do, and I share on a daily basis whenever I have whenever I have the chance to speak to folks. I'm going to share some tips with you on how you can definitely work on your mental health, okay? And some tips that you can do. So one of the things that I love to do is, number one, we have to normalize therapy. We have to. It is okay to see a therapist. Honestly, let me tell you something about therapy. It unlocks doors that you never even know there were doors there. It gives you keys to places that you didn't even know. I didn't even know that I had to struggle with forming relationships with women just because I felt abandoned by my mother. There's so many things that you learn. Number two, and I want you to know, Jesus and therapy can be in the same conversation. It can be in the same sentence. Number two, you got to change your media diet. You got to change it to the extent that you can mentally and emotionally manage. And I tell people, first thing in the morning, you're going to get up and watch the news? First thing in the morning, you didn't even pray, you didn't even meditate, you didn't drink some water. First thing, the news sometimes is plagued with so much negativity, and that seeps into your brain and into your body, and you carry that all through the day. So you can change your media diet. Trust me, you can say, you know what, I'm gonna have the media for lunch instead of the first thing that you wake up to. Another one is to set firm boundaries to match your mental and emotional capacity. So I used to be the person that will call my friends, oh my God, I have this drama today, this happened, and then I realized I don't even know what my friend is going through. So let me ask you, do you have the capacity to take on what I'm about to say? Another thing I do is I repeat a mantra or affirmation that helps me to stay grounded. So because I struggle still with anxiety, and there's a difference too, as a mental health advocate, I learned certain words and how I can change around my words. So I no longer use the word crazy, and instead of saying suffer, I say struggle. So there's different ways, words mean a lot. So what I'll do is I'll repeat an affirmation, I'll say, what if statements do not serve me? They only interrupt my present life. Because my what if statements are never oh my God, what if I fly? So I was what if I drop down? Right? So I try to change it as much as possible. Another thing I do, go for a walk. You can go for a drive and then sit in your car for 10 minutes before heading inside, because people don't tell you how car therapy is so good. Another thing, adopt a plant. Do you know that the aloe vera, the lavender, eucalyptus, all of these plants are really good to managing anxiety? Get a plant in your house. You never know. I don't want you to ever force yourself to forget that this happened. No, you gotta heal, and healing is not a pretty thing. Healing is not linear. Healing is up and down, up and down. But when you do something, you go through something traumatic and you heal from it, your future self will thank you. Another thing is stop and take deep breaths. Stretch. Keep a journal. Avoid playing the comparison game because you could be comparing your chapter 1 with someone else's chapter 20. Don't. Another thing is, one of my favorite things to do is to mute, block, and delete if necessary. Mute, block, and delete if necessary because it is a form of self-love. Before I go, I want to leave you with a few decolonizing affirmations that I want you all to take in, and if you need copies of this, I will gladly give it to you. So number 1, and I'm going to get you to repeat after me, okay? I'm just going to get your participation. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, all right, number 1. It's okay to reclaim traditions that my family have left behind. Okay, maybe that's long. Okay, so it's okay to reclaim, traditions that my family have left behind. I'm allowed to reclaim my native tongue. I co-create relationships that can hold my multiple complexities and identities. I deserve luxury in my life. I deserve love, healthy love. I deserve to be pampered. I deserve that vacation or staycation. I will rest because rest is reparations. I deserve to work a job that I love. I deserve to be celebrated, not tolerated. Yes. I will not feel guilty for enjoying my life. My value is not connected to my ability to endure struggle. I don't have to suffer in order to learn my lessons. And I don't have to accumulate mental and emotional scars to prove my strength. I'll say that one over again. I don't have to suffer in order to learn my lessons, and I don't have to accumulate mental and emotional scars to prove my strength. We have 3 more. So I deserve a beautiful life. One thing I've learned is that your name is a compliment. Your name really is a compliment. So whenever people are like, Stacy and Buchannan, thank you. I try to incorporate that as much as possible, and I want you to be so proud of your name. So I want you to say, I am, and then say your name. So I'll go first. I am Stacy and Buchannan. Yes. And lastly, and this is an ode to my book, I want you to say good for me. And the reason why I say good for me is like Randall said it here too, and this is something that I live my life by. In life, whether things happen, whether they're good or bad, I know it can be so tough, but just know that it's never happening to you, it is happening for you. And your lessons or whatever you've been through, you have to understand that they don't affirm who you are in the end. They realign you to who you're really meant to be, okay? So don't let it be like, oh, that is me. You are not your struggle. You are never your struggle. You are never your depression. You're never your anxiety. You're never your schizophrenia. You are not that because you are you. So I want you to say, good for me. Good for me. Okay, I think that is all I have. Jamal, did you want me to open up for questions or that's it? That's it? Okay, all right, thank you so much for having me. If you want, you can find my documentary. It's on YouTube. It's called The Blind Stigma, Mental Health in the Black Community. And and also if you want to purchase my book, it's online as well. You can find it on my website, stacyandbuchanan.com. Thank you so much. It's been an honor being here.